Hey, Evie.
Hey, Karen. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Oh,
I always
it's
I just want to screen tonight. Last time we did this, we had 2 or 3 screens. So why don't we go ahead and start doing introductions and meet each other. I'll start. I'm Evie Frankel. I'm a former high school teacher at Bell Multicultural High School in DC, and have been doing uh, education equity organizing for a long time, since the late 90s, starting in Montgomery County and then nationally, and now working with um, AROS, the Alliance to Reclaim Our Schools in Prince George's County. Karen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'd love to. Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Guzman. I'm the parent and community organizer working for PGCEA, the Teachers Union, and I've also been working with Evie to, uplift our communities in AROS in Prince George's County.
And Dr. Horton, I think I'm going to wait for you to introduce yourself until we have more folks on to get the biggest bang for our buck. Let's see. Hi, Pam Boozer-Strother. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Pamela Boozer-Strother. I'm the District 3 Board of Education member for PGCPS. It's great to be here.
Welcome. How about Maria Lucia Vasquez? If you'd say your name, what county, whether you're from Prince George's or Montgomery, what your role is, whether you're a parent, educator, community school coordinator, and what school.
Hi, my name is Maria Lucia Vasquez. I am from Mexico. My children go in Harmony Hill, Montgomery County.
Actually, should we talk, maybe Karen, we should do language justice now.
Sure. So we have an interpreter with us tonight because we have some folks who are Spanish speakers, which is awesome. So I'm going to ask everybody to please go to the bottom of your screens, whether you're on a tablet, phone, or computer, and you should be able to see a globe that says interpretation. If you just click on that globe, select the language that you would prefer, and then make sure you mute original audio as well. That way you're only able to hear everything in one language. Y para los hablantes en español, gracias por estar con nosotros esta noche. Tenemos una interpretadora con nosotros hoy. Entonces, si ustedes hablan español y prefieren recibir el mensaje en español, les pido que por favor se direccionen a la parte de abajo de sus pantallas. Si están en un celular, tableta o computadora, pueden encontrar un mapita, un globito que dice interpretación. Hacen clic en ese globito y pueden seleccionar español, y también tienen que seleccionar la opción que dice Mute Original Audio para que solo reciban el mensaje en español. Si hay alguien que tiene alguna dificultad, también me puede hacer cualquier pregunta y yo estoy aquí con mucho gusto para apoyarles.
Okay. Let's
let me just ask Hilda real quick to test. Hilda, can you please test to make sure they can hear you?
I can hear you.
Ok. Señora María Lucía, ¿me puede escuchar? Irma Vázquez, ¿me escucha?
Can
Karen?
they hear you? Okay.
Thumbs up. Okay. What about, does Maria Lucia needs me? And I would like to know if she can hear me, but.
Karen, can you ask her?
Yeah, I just don't know what channel she's in. María, ¿me puedes escuchar? María Lucia, ¿me puedes escuchar? Puedes seleccionar en la parte de abajo de tu pantalla, ves un globito que dice interpretación. Puedes hacer clic en ese globito y seleccionar español, por favor. Spanish. Y también mute original audio. Listo, ok.
Si me puede escuchar, podría responder, por favor.
Should I keep going, or Karen, or should we wait?
I don't know. I can't hear Hilda. Can you?
Okay.
Yo puedo escucharte, pero necesita hacer clic del unmute. Yo no sé si es haciendo este.
Okay, if English speakers hear Hilda, you should mute original audio. So you're only listening to the English channel.
Ok, señora María Lucía, yo estoy ahora en el canal de español. ¿Puede alguien escucharme en el canal de español?
Sí, yo estoy aquí ahora en el canal de español, pero no
La
sé
señora
si-
María Lucía no puede escucharme
no puede
porque no me está respondiendo.
Okay.
Tenemos que ayudarla a ella. ¿Está en una tableta o está en un teléfono?
Ok, recibí un mensaje de Cindy que dice que le va a apoyar.
¿A qué se refiere con eso?
Ya, le voy a preguntar, can you ask her to get, to select Spanish? Okay. Bueno, yo te voy a, cualquier información voy a venir a este canal.
Ok, necesito saber si ella me puede escuchar entonces para yo poder empezar a interpretar.
Sí, yo creo que no.
Ok, ¿cómo podemos ayudarla para que me
Sí,
escuche?
Cindy, una participante que está con nosotros, le va a ayudar. Dice que le va a ayudar. Entonces, no sé, ¿qué hacemos? ¿Continuamos?
¿Les va a ayudar para conectarse?
Ujú.
Ok, gracias. ¿Y usted va a necesitar la interpretación en español?
Yo no.
La señora,
Irma, creo que sí, ¿cierto?
recién había una señora ahí. Irma Vázquez.
Oh, no, she said I speak English.
Ella habla inglés. Okay, so okay, perfect. No, thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
I guess we are looking for Miss.
Okay, Karen, can I keep going?
Okay, Evie, sorry. Yeah, we're trying to get Maria on the Spanish channel, but you all can go ahead. We're trying to work with her.
Okay. Oh, okay, somebody just called her, it looks like.
Mhm.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right,
she's
so
helping
let's
us.
keep going. I think what we'll do, rather than continue to go around, because that will take some of our precious time, is I'm gonna ask Dr. Ingrid Williams-Horton, who's the Director of Community Schools here in Prince George's County, to say a few words to us. I'm so glad that she's here tonight. This is the second in, this is a repeat of the first class in this series that is going to be in total a 7-part series that will go tonight through the beginning of June. And and it will cover a lot of information about about community school implementation, and is part of a national program sponsored by the National Education Association. And so participation in this class tonight and in the following classes that we'll do together also buys you entree into a whole network of community school stakeholders all over the country that meet once a month. And so I think it'll be a very interesting experience for everyone. So at this moment, I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Williams-Horton to say a few words, and then we'll get going.
Oh, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mrs. Frankel, for having me speak to our cohort of community school coordinators, as well as our parents. Good evening to our board member, Pamela Boozer Strother, who also serves on our district steering committee. So thank you for joining us this evening, and happy holidays to everyone, in case I don't get an opportunity to say happy holidays to all of you. I just want you to know that the Office of Community Schools and our community school coordinators are doing fabulous work in all of our Prince George's County Public Schools to support our families, our students, and our community. And they're to be commended for their work. If you follow us on Twitter, if you follow your schools on Twitter, you get a firsthand glimpse of the work that's being done. So please follow us as well as your schools on Twitter. Ms. Boozer Strother follows us on Twitter, so shout out to her for following us on Twitter to see the work that we're doing. In case you don't know, we also have a mental health initiative, so please send the word out to your communities to let them know that if you're part of our community schools, that any of your students as well as your families have access to free mental health services during the school day. We have 6 mental health agencies in our community schools that are working to provide mental health services to our families at no charge. So we're available for you. If you need anything, we have community school coordinators. If you reach out to the schools and find out who your community school coordinator is, they are available to provide you with resources regarding food, housing assistance, social and emotional assistance. If you need self-care, whatever you need, the school is there for you to support you through this pandemic and beyond. So we're here to support you through whatever you need, the good, the bad, everything. We're here and we consider you a part of our extended family. So happy holidays to you all. And we look forward to working with you from here and beyond. Thank you, Mrs. Frankel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Horton, and happy holidays. Okay, now I'm going to ask Karen if, so I think I'm going to take back my offer for everyone to introduce themselves, and we're going to get started with tonight's course because I want to try to get you out of here in as close to an hour as possible. And so rather than going through introductions now, there'll be opportunities for folks to share with each other during tonight's time together. And when you share, if you would introduce yourself with your name, your school, and your role, that would be wonderful. Okay, so Karen, if you could share the screen. Okay, so anybody who's ever been on a call with me knows that I don't like sharing screens because what I really like is to look at everybody's faces so that I can see whether they're smiling or confused or excited or whatever. So I'm going to be asking Karen to go back and forth between sharing the screen and not sharing the screen so that I can see your fabulous faces. As I said, this is the first in a 7-part series of Community School 101. We're going to be talking about, tonight we'll be talking about the history of community schools. Next time we'll be talking about the 6 pillars in a lot more depth. We'll touch on them tonight. And then we'll go into a lot of work on implementation, drawing on best practices from all over the country. So next slide. So I want to welcome everyone, especially our guests. So those are Dr. Williams Horton and Pamela Boozer Strother, Board of Ed representative from District 3, as well as a member of the Community Schools Steering Committee of Prince George's County. We already went through language equity, ground rules. If you have questions, if you'll put them in the chat, and we'll try to address them. As we start participating together, if folks can be brief so that other people have a chance to speak, and don't speak again until you notice that a lot of other people have spoken. That would be great. Okay, next slide. All right, tonight's session is about the history of community schools which I think of as my touchstone. And when I talk about a touchstone, it's sort of like when you think about a body of work that you're doing, you don't always stay totally in touch with the part of your heart that is attached to that work. And sometimes, you know, you can get caught up in the day-to-day work and the pressure and the confusion. And so it's good to have a place that you can go that brings you back to why you got into this work to begin with. And so, next slide, we're going to talk, and the history of community schools is my touchstone. But I want to give folks now a chance to think about what their touchstones are. So learning didn't always take place in schools, right? I mean, and in many cultures, much of the learning that goes on still takes place outside of schools. People learn through apprenticeships. People learn through their churches. People learn by being out in nature, by following their parents around and you know, learning skills from their parents, whether it's cooking or carpentry or whatever, fixing cars. So what I'd like folks to do right now, and I'll give you the instruction and then we're going to unshare the screen so we can see one another, is to take a moment to just go inside yourself and look for the reason that you're here and doing this work. There's something about your being here tonight, about your being part of community schools. There's something that you understand about the relationship between community and learning that has been lost in some of our current learning institutions. Next slide. So what is your best, most profound memory of learning that took place somewhere other than a school building? So take a minute and think, and we can take down the slide now and get to see one another's faces. And, you know, I just say, I know there are lots of good reasons for people to be not showing their faces. You know, maybe you are having supper or feeding your kids, but if you can and are willing to, that would be great. And I'm seeing Keisha here, who was here last time. And I don't know, Keisha, if you got the message that this is a repeat of what we did last month. So you're welcome to stay, but we'll be starting new content in January, February, March, April, May, June.
Okay, I'll stay. That's
Okay.
fine.
All right. Well, we're happy to have you. So is anybody ready? An experience, a profound, exciting experience of learning that has stayed with you, that happened somewhere not in a school building? You can just unmute yourself.
I put a thumbs up, Evie.
Okay. Hi, Camille.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
How's everyone today? I want to say one of my most profound experiences learning something outside of like a classroom or a school environment probably had to be when I would go over my aunt's house. She lived in Upper Marlboro, and she, in my mind, she had a mansion. But now that I look back at it, it was just like a little bit bigger than like a single family home. But I loved art, and you know, she would always save me like little knickknacks and stuff to make art with, and she would always give me paper bags from like the grocery store, and I would turn those paper bags into like amazing artwork. I'm talking about like I would create like little astronaut helmets, and I would make like little cityscapes and stuff with it. But I think that that was the most amazing learning experience for me, because she taught me how to be resourceful and use the things that we already had. And so I think I still use that to this day, which is probably why I'm community school coordinator, because I feel like I can make something out of nothing.
Okay.
That's my
That's-
experience.
That's great. And Camille is community school coordinator at Templeton Elementary.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, somebody else. Don't be shy. Lindsay, save me. Share something.
Oh my goodness. Put on the spot. You know, the first thing that came to me was at my church, actually, back when I was in college. I had kind of deviated and gone off on my own path, as young people do. And I came back feeling very upset and very lost. And I was welcomed back. And one of the elders of the church said, "Welcome back, daughter."
Mm.
And it was so profound. It was so profound. I learned forgiveness, the prodigal daughter, the whole 9 yards of it just sits with me to this day. And it's hard for me to not forgive people who have wronged me, because I had that profound experience when I was younger of what really it meant to be welcomed back. And that was wonderful. So I want to bring that to the Community Schools Project, to be so that everyone feels welcome and everyone feels like they're included.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where
Yeah, and that touches on restorative practices, right? You know, one of the 6 pillars. Thank you so much for sharing, Lindsay. And Lindsay is a teacher at Langley Park McCormick. Let's have 1 or 2 more.
I can go. My name is Billy Schulman. I work with Miss Thorpe. Good to see her name. I was like, is that really her? And so I'm an instructional coach. I work at the 2 international high schools in Prince George's County. I've been with them since they started in 2015, and then before then I was a teacher at Northwestern High School for 10 years. And your question really stumped me because I've things in school, but in the summer of 2008, I had finished my master's program, and I wanted to do something fun. But I also wanted to do something like challenging. And when I was at Northwestern back then, our Latino population kept rising. You know, when I first started in 2005, there was like 20%. And then I taught ESOL social studies, and my classes kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I decided I really need to like learn Spanish. And it wasn't for the students per se, it was for the parents. Because you got a problem, you need to talk to the parents, you need to, try to speak their language. And it really, really helps. It also helps in the classroom once in a while, just to make sure they know, all the bad words. But I say all that because I did a language immersion program in Costa Rica for 6 weeks, where I lived with a family that spoke no English. And it was, Darwin, right? Survive or be eaten. No, and I did take classes during the weekdays, but just, living with the family, just a regular average family, and, learning customs and sharing and talking. I remember the first night we had a conversation about Obama and John McCain, because this was right before, and it was just a lot of fun, very memorable, and it just makes you, at a school that only works with language learners, my brain processes Spanish like a lot of students process English. And so it just makes you more empathetic to what our students and families go through.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. If there's one more quick one, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll move on. Ms. Vasquez wants to.
Okay. My name is Irma Vasquez, and I'm the Parent and Engagement Assistant at Templeton Elementary School. It's awesome what we say, what is the learning outside of the school? because sometimes we think it's only the school that is going to educate and learn, but basically we learn first from home, right? It's our first school. What it fascinated me is in USA, because I'm an immigrant, it was that the use of the library. Because in my country, we had to travel to the library almost every day because our learning was like investigation, as even in elementary is research. And when I came and I got involved with my daughter, it was awesome that my daughter was bringing books from the school, or we can rent books at the library. And then, as Mr. Schulman said, the Latino community was so small but growing that teachers didn't know how to deal with that. The principal was waiting for me at the door to make the calls and everything for the parents to translate into Spanish. And my English was not good, but I was helping. And that is how it grows my passion, because I see the doors open for parents and the one-on-one education, because they had to complete their education with the parent involvement, which is not the same in my country. In my country, you drop your child, and sometimes they call you only for the bad news. So that was like, I said, wow, this is awesome that the libraries are really close to the schools. The distance is not bad. And that you can rent the books, drop them at the library from the school, and all the systems. So that is the one that fascinates me, and how the history of the schools were created by churches. And I'm using that with my parents now with the virtual life, because I tell them, don't panic, we're going to get through this, because the schools 250 years ago in USA didn't exist. They were created by home and the church.
There you go. Okay,
Thank you.
well, what a perfect segue into talking about the history of community schools. Thank you so much, Ms. Vasquez. Okay, and thank you all, everyone, for sharing. It's always good to hear. Next slide. Okay, so as I said, so one of my touchstones, and this is really my personal history in some ways, is that when I first started doing education equity organizing at the national level, my first assignment was to go to Cleveland and to practically live in Cleveland for about 6 months. And I reached out to one after another of community-based organizations in Cleveland, and held focus groups with parents to find out what kinds of things they really wanted in their schools, because we were starting to work on organizing in the organization that I was working with. It was actually the precursor of AROS. It was a community organizing group working with the teachers union in the city of Cleveland. And so my job was to meet with the parents, and we came out of those maybe dozen focus groups with parents at churches, at preschools, at community centers, at libraries, with these 4 pieces that people said they wanted, the parents said they wanted. The name of the report that we wrote was called Speaking Out of School, What Parents Want. And they all have to do with the relationship between school and community. So it's the orange boxes, if you're following me. So the first orange box, parents, grandparents, and guardians as part of the school community enriches it with their knowledge, skills, and energy. So tearing down the walls between school and community. Parents and caregivers are not just people who need things, they're people who have so much to share. And we're all part of the school community together. Number 2 is second orange box. Teachers as part of the larger community helps to facilitate learning. So teachers who feel themselves in strong relationships with the students and the parents have so much of a better shot at communicating what it is that they want to teach, because they understand their community, they understand, cultural relevance issues. So that speaks to culturally relevant curriculum and all kinds of other things about trust. Box number 3, students building community with other students and staff creates safe schools. So, there's a lot of worry about safety in our schools, but the more trust we build among one another, the more students understand each other's cultures, and the more staff respect students and vice versa, we wind up with restorative practices as opposed to punitive practices in our schools. And then lastly, curriculum that reflects the richness of the community makes students want to learn. When I talk about community schools, I often say community schools are where we tear down the wall between schools and community. Okay, next slide. So what I want to do before we go into an article, we're going to read short pieces from an article about the history of community schools, especially one particular school. I want to share a little bit. The piece that I just showed you about my experience in Cleveland is very, very related to the 6 pillars of community schools that we've adopted in Montgomery County. Can we take this slide down for a second, please, Karen? So how many of you feel like, just give me a real thumbs up, or you can put your thumbs up on your screen if you know how. How many of you feel like you have a really good sense of the 6 pillars of community schools? Okay. All right. So, in Prince George's County, we've adopted a community school model that uses these 6 pillars. So what I'm going to do now is just very, very quickly, next session in January, we're going to take a really deep dive into the 6 pillars and talk about examples of best practices from both our local community and around the country. But right now, I'm going to go through the 6 pillars very quickly, because then when I read to you examples of a wonderful community school that ran in East Harlem, New York, from the mid-1930s to the mid-1950s, I'm going to ask you to be thinking about which pillars the principal of that school was thinking about as he did his work and as the community worked with him. So Karen, if you can put back the 6 pillars, I'm just going to go through them real quickly. Okay, so we just talked about them a little bit as we went through the work that I did in Cleveland. So expanded and culturally relevant curriculum. Everyone knows what that is. Kids have to see themselves in what they're learning, or it's way harder for them to learn. It's just common sense. Effective teaching practices, using project-based learning, using problem solving, all the various hands-on kinds of things that teachers do that make kids want to learn, and that tailor the learning to the particular learning capacities of different children, or not capacities, learning modes of different children. Inclusive leadership, that's a pillar of community schools, because again, we're talking about parents, teachers, and members of the school community being part of the leadership team, helping to govern in the sense that we want to listen to what kinds of books parents think their children should be reading or want to be reading. We want to listen to the community when we do asset mapping, and we see what's available out there in the community to us. And So we're always on the lookout for new ideas from all our various stakeholders. Multi-tiered supports, what we're really talking about here is restorative practices, family and community partnerships. These are the relationships that we build between the school and all its partners so that they're actually engaged together in governing the school and advocating for the school community. We're going to have a chance to advocate for our community schools, in fact, when we work to override the veto of the Kerwin legislation so that we can keep having community schools in Prince George's and the rest of Maryland. And then, of course, the community support services, which very often is what people think of when they think of community schools, but it's not all of what community schools are. Community support services are the wraparound services, you know, providing eyeglasses to kids who can't see the board, having health clinics at your school. I've started going to meetings of the Maryland School-Based Health Center Coalition, and I think, the more we can have health centers in schools and provide healthcare for both parents, community members, and students right in the school, then people don't have to go and spend their bus fare getting someplace. And especially in a moment like this, to use the school buildings when students aren't in them learning to provide services that are needed. Laundry, some people have found that by simply having laundry machines in schools, washing machines in schools, that you increase attendance because kids don't have those things in some places. So, okay, so these are our 6 pillars. So, try to keep them in mind. You can open a window if you can figure out how to do that with them as we go through the next part of the lesson. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we're gonna be reading together maybe 10 paragraphs from an article that appeared in the American Educator, which is the American Federation of Teachers publication in the summer of 2009, called The Enduring Appeal of Community Schools. And as we read through what this amazing principal did for 20 years in East Harlem, think about what pillar is brought to mind and how does this build on or change your idea of community schools. Okay, next slide. Okay, so in the 1930s, Leonard Covello, principal of Benjamin Franklin High School in East Harlem, New York City, focused on the community as a starting point for learning. So the community was his base for curriculum. Covello emphasized the school as a means for social problem solving and for training students in effective democratic citizenship. He believed that the school had to be the leader and coordinating agency in all educational enterprises because the surging life of the community as a whole, its motion picture houses, its dance halls, its streets, its gangs, its churches, its community houses, its community codes of behavior and morals, these will either promote or destroy the work of the school. Next slide. So he wanted to be part of the community because he wanted the impact to be going both ways. He was a community organizer and a trained sociologist who, as Franklin's principal, used social base maps of East Harlem's neighborhoods that identified every apartment building, including the ethnicity of its restaurants, every store, church, empty lot, park, school, social club, and so on, in order to understand the social geography in which Franklin students lived. He conceptualized community problem solving as a curricular and co-curricular means to prepare students to be active, publicly engaged citizens. So can you take down the slide, Karen, and let's see faces. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about coming up in I think in February is the seminar will be about community mapping. what pillars does this speak to for you? What Leonard Covello was doing there in East Harlem in the 30s and 40s and 50s?
Would it be like expanded and culturally relevant curriculum?
There you go. Sure. Using the community as your base to find your curriculum couldn't be more culturally relevant. Anything else that people are thinking of? Oscar, is your hand up or did that just? Oh, okay.
Did we have community involvement?
Yes, community involvement, absolutely. Community involvement in both ways, right? The school is in the community is in the school. Yeah, it's definitely one of the 6 pillars. Okay, let's go back to the slides. Okay, next one. Okay, from a school site open continuously from 8:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. to several programs that operated off-site in street units, Covello and his allies strove to build strong school community partnerships in East Harlem. In 1938 article for the journal, somebody's saying it reminds her of Paulo Freire's work in Brazil. Absolutely, absolutely. Covello and his allies strove to build school community partnerships in East Harlem. In a 1938 article for the journal Progressive Education, Covello wrote that his aims were as follows. 1, adequate service to the community along educational, civic, social, and welfare lines. 2, restoration of communal living as far as may be possible in a congested city neighborhood. These are, people who came from villages. We still have people who are coming from Central America, from Mexico, and they come and all of a sudden they're in Washington, D.C., living in crowded apartment buildings. So how can you create the restoration of communal living? And next slide. Creation of more harmonious relationships between Americans of foreign stock and older Americans. This is the language that was being used at the time. Training of local leaders qualified to guide and serve within the community itself in creating the best infrastructure possible for the life of the community as a whole. So, do we have the libraries we need? Do we have the public transportation that we need? Do we have, do we have the housing that people need? Right now, in the middle of COVID, do we have the housing that people need to make sure that they don't get thrown out of, to make sure that their kids have a place where they can be with their computer? Do they have the internet Wi-Fi that they need as a part of infrastructure? Do they have the right speed? Do they have the information that they need? Development of a complete neighborhood program. Okay, let's go back to seeing faces and let's talk more about what this reminds you of in terms of the 6 pillars. Any thoughts?
I can go. It makes me think of community support services and kind of also family and community partnerships, but mostly community support services.
Okay, and that's Sasha Ledesma. She's the community school coordinator at Beacon Heights.
Yes, sorry, I didn't introduce.
That's okay. I'm going to do it for, I don't know everybody, but, and I've never met you, Sasha, but I know your name. Camille, did you want to say something again?
I just gave Sasha a round of applause. I was going to say the same thing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I gave you a round of applause too when you went.
Anybody else?
Well, okay, Lindsay O'Malley, Langley Park, McCormick, just a teacher. I can't help but feel a sense of kind of frustration and I don't want to say disgust, but oh my goodness, how did we get here to this point where something that was so clear in the 30s and 40s is so lost to us now? I'm so angry, I guess, is what I want to say.
Well, I appreciate that sentiment, and you know, there are probably people who share it. I say, let's turn that into action, and let Leonard Cavello rise again, and his team, because he didn't do it alone. Okay, let's go back, but thank you for sharing that, Lindsay. Okay, let's go back to Leonard. So he wanted to build a shared democratic vision and the means to attain it among East Harlem's 34 ethnic and racial groups. And many of your schools, you know what he's talking about. Students and teachers at Franklin mobilized citizen action, public work campaigns around education, health and sanitation, citizenship, naturalization, and housing. Students participated as researchers, essayists, peer teachers, demonstrators, lobbyists, even arguing one case to Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia. You know, I'll just say in Chicago right now, not right now, in their last contract, the teachers union made demands in their contract about affordable housing for the city of Chicago, because 19,000 of the students in Chicago public schools are houseless. Let's do one more slide and then we'll go back to the pillars. Coordinated by the school's housing committee, one of 6 school community committees involving students, teachers, and community leaders, Franklin High School sponsored public exhibits and films of housing models, discussion in civics, economics, and history classes, essay contests through the English department, studies of local land values and use. So actually like going out and doing your social studies and science and math projects out there in the community, radio broadcasts, all the skills that can create for kids and their sense of agency and voice, scale modeling of housing options through the art department, forums with local experts, translations in Italian and Spanish through the modern languages department. Okay, let's come back together for a minute. What about that? What does that bring to mind for folks?
I see Cindy's hand is up.
Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy Vargas, the Parent Community Coordinator at Harmony Hills Elementary School in Montgomery County. And for me, that sounds a lot like inclusive leadership, bringing together a lot of different groups and making sure that a lot of the diversity within the school is represented.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm going to piggyback off of what Cindy said, but I also thought it was the other one, the effective teaching too, because it was really relevant to what they were already going through. So the teachers kind of just like honed it all in. So they were able to see themselves and, you know, social justice and everything. So yeah. I think it's kind of like a variant of both of those.
Yep. Yep. I think that's exactly right. Yep. Yeah. Okay, let's go back to, go ahead.
That, I just wanted to, I saw we have some messages. So Georgina Rivers said this reminds her of Paulo Freire's work in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And Billy said this is the internet access that we need. So.
Right. Yep. 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 It's all still relevant. Okay, next slide. Again, more, they kept on going there in East Harlem. In conjunction with local agencies and community groups, the students organized a sanitation parade, complete with a 50-piece band and 5,000 leaflets. This is in the 30s and 40s. A conference led by the local congressional representative. So they're getting involved in politics. A cleanup contest sponsored by the Daily News newspaper. An educational campaign complete with roving sound truck broadcasts. A science and social science lesson plan for the school. And a successful effort to change the city's sanitary code to enforce more frequent and effective garbage collection. Successful effort. That means that they worked on it and they won. Okay, next slide. Covello's approach to community problem solving tapped a multi-method urban sociological research tradition. He, staff, and students carried out surveys, case studies, home visits, interviews, photographs, and observation, all in an effort to understand the underlying dynamics of the community in which his students lived. Next slide. One distinguishing feature of Covello's community-centered approach was the street unit, a unit that functions literally on the street, directly challenging and bridging the spatial distinction between school and community. One unit, the Association of Parents, Teachers, and Friends, had 240 members. And the fall the school opened in 1934 and supported the growth of other units such as the Friends and Neighbors Club. The latter was open to any reputable community organization and held meetings of the Housing Committee, school social clubs, and adult education classes, which were part of an extensive works progress administration, something we need right now in this country, adult school program enrolling over 1,700 adults by early 1938. So because the Works Progress Administration paid people to do things that they could learn from doing, because people needed money at the time. I mean, it's just like the stimulus package, except that they were actually providing people with something to do, and they paid them to do it. Next slide. Karen, how many more of these are there?
Slides, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, of the article.
Oh, let's see. That's it. This is.
Oh, that's it. Okay, this is okay. So this is the last one. Covello's community school project lasted from 1934 to 1956. Covello created a participatory mechanism, community advisory committees. I know a lot of you have committees in your schools for jointly involving community organizations, teachers, parents, students, and at-large community members in community problem-solving initiatives. To a certain extent, the work of these committees penetrated the academic curriculum, especially at crisis points in the life of East Harlem. Covello struggled with balancing disciplinary struggles with his community problem-solving approach, which is a perennial tension in community schools. Ultimately, World War II and the conservative social forces it unleashed were major factors in diminishing the East Harlem Community School. Okay, let's look at each other's faces again. So this sort of speaks to what Lindsay was saying and why this model went under. And it was conservative political forces in the country. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about starting now is a broader curriculum that I'm going to show you. But before we go there, before we talk about all of that, just any other things that people would like to share about what this work in Harlem in the 30s, 40s, and 50s makes you think about in terms of your community schools. Just any thoughts?
I think that this was really interesting, reading this study, and it made me think about the framework for youth participatory action research, or YPAR, and how we can include that in our community schools, because YPAR, or involving students in leading their own sort of initiatives, that it kind of hits all 6 of those pillars right at once, because it's enabling students to really be the ones in charge and driving the forces, asking them what it is that they think their community needs, and then helping them sort of facilitate getting those programs getting started in their schools. And so I think that was really interesting, that even before literature on YPAR had been published, this was really going on. And it really speaks to the need for our young people to be politically engaged, because what from what we saw, the thing that really stopped young people's schools from serving them were these conservative political forces. So that really speaks to the need to keep students being engaged, to keep students being democratic participants. So I just really want to, YPAR stands for Youth Participatory Action Research. So a lot of times in schools, when we do research on students, it's like top down, right? The people at the top are conducting the studies. Youth Participatory Action Research is really letting students be involved in what they need, and they're doing their research themselves. So they might say, hey, students at my school, we have an attendance issue. So how can we solve this problem? Instead of the administration studying that problem, or, the district solving that problem, it's students coming together, family members coming together to try to solve that problem, to see what they need to do, to put initiatives in place to respond to that. So, and I think that it's really important, like I was saying, for students to remain politically involved, since those political challenges is what's disenfranchising. They have to be able to push back against that and resist those changes. So thank you for sharing this with us. This was really enlightening for me to keep seeing that.
And thank you, Georgina. Can you just say what school you're at and what your role is?
I am at Francis Scott Key Elementary School in District Heights, Maryland, in PG County. And I'm a classroom teacher there, and I'm also serving as the community school teacher liaison for the time being.
Great, thanks. And Sharon, were you just waving, or did you want to say something?
I was just waving.
Okay.
I loved it.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else want to share something before we?
I didn't have like any, I'm sorry. You can go ahead, Cindy.
Go ahead, Sasha.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I didn't have any like significant thoughts, but I just thought it was amazing that the work started so early on, especially with this work being so new in our county. I guess it doesn't easily come to mind that this could have been happening in the 30s and in the 40s. So that alone, I think is super awesome.
Yeah, I think so too. Cindy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, for me, I found out the part that I'm struggling with is figuring out a way to get past the political participation part, because I think there's a lot of fear with getting involved in anything political at the leadership level. So finding a better way to incorporate that, or finding a way to be able to talk to our local leadership or district leadership, whatever it may be, without bringing in that fear of, well, we need to, we're worried about what our school district might say. We're worried about what permissions we might have. So I think that's what I would really want to get more out of, or get some more insight, like moving forward, on how we can make sure that we can't, because at the end of the day, we can't really do much without having, without working with our political, with our local political leadership. It's very difficult to move anything along. But if we as a school or a school district are afraid to go into that sphere, then there's still very much a disconnect of how can we better support our families and our students without working in collaboration with them.
Well, I think that there are different sort of levels in which people can, to have a parade, for example, that's drawing attention to the sanitation issue in New York. I think that's not something that necessarily, I think there's a difference between party politics and electoral politics and activism. And I think that that people can figure out lines to be drawn there. But I also encourage you all, what we're going to talk about now for the last 5 or 10 minutes is what comes next and the resources that will be available to you, and being part of this national network of people who are all working with this same curriculum. You'll be able to have those kinds of conversations. And I think that, these are conversations that you all will have amongst yourselves and that we can have together to figure those things out. That's why we want to really have a strong learning community here to think about those things and talk about them together. any last other thoughts before Lindsay? And then Oscar.
My school has a wonderful parent teacher community liaison team. They're fantastic. But I find that I always kind of feel like my parents are afraid to get involved in a sense because they might feel voiceless because of their status as citizens. That really is hard for me that they don't, and this is just my sense. I haven't heard anybody say this, but I get the sense that they don't feel like they can speak out about their school because they don't have the investiture that they have, as an American citizen would have. And it's so frustrating because you just want them to talk. But my team, our team is fantastic. So they're doing a fantastic job. It's like just getting the word out to get the leadership and get people to step up. It's something that we haven't found the key for yet, I don't think.
Oscar was gonna talk next, so maybe I'll let him address that question. Oscar, why don't you introduce yourself, and you'd be better at addressing that than I would.
So Oscar Alvarenga, I am the parent community organizer with the Teachers Union of Montgomery County. And so to what Lindsay is saying, I think, a lot of this is new, and it's a trust issue, really. There's a lot of folks that I know that are 100% illegal, according, to our undocumented ways.
Undocumented.
And they're undocumented, and they are activists, and they're in the front line, and they are in front of folks all the time, advocating for their community. But the reason they feel that they can do that is because they have found trust in those around them, and that takes time. I feel that this whole community school and learning all of this, a lot of us organizers are learning, right? And are trying to wrap our hands around it. Our community is even more removed from that. And so it does take time. We just have to trust the process and keep working together to build that trust. And once that trust is there, you will find more people voicing and speaking. I know that when I call folks, parents, I spend 45 minutes on the phone. They're telling me all sorts of things. And I've asked them, have you ever shared this at a school? Oh, no. I don't know how. I'm gonna say the same way you just did it with me. But I've built that trust, right? And that takes time, that's all. And I was gonna say about what we just, Ellie just went through. I think that one of the biggest things that I took out of that is how they incorporated adults in the whole process, right? While it was schools, and when we think of schools, we think of students and kids, but really it was about adults. And it wasn't just about the services that adults can get out of. I think sometimes we get locked in what service can I give to the families and communities? But this is the services that we can offer, but this is also how you can offer something back. And that created this momentum. And I think that also helps with what Cindy was talking about, the political part, that the more we can get parents involved and the more that we can get them to trust us in helping them guide us, the easier it is to break some of these barriers that are in front of us. When we are part of the system, it's more difficult to work the system. But when we get the public involved, the system then starts to shift and move, because now the public is asking and demanding these things. So that was part of what I really enjoyed out of it.
So I'm gonna, in honor of trying to get you guys out of here relatively on time, I'm gonna just go through the last piece. I'll just respond to one of the things that Oscar and sort of the piece between Oscar and Lindsay is that as the Alliance to Reclaim Our Schools, as AROS, one of the things that we have been working with folks on is learning how to do one-on-one conversations with one another, and really do deep listening. And so that's something that's going to come up in this seminar series, I think in January, I think maybe in March. But if anybody wants more information about learning how to do one-on-ones and doing really deep listening, Karen, Oscar, or I will be happy to talk with you about that. Okay, we're going to share the screen again. Actually, I think I'll share the screen this time. Oops, except I have to. Everybody's going to have to be patient with me for a sec because I have to find the slides that I want. Okay, here we go. Boom. Oh dear. Oh no. Karen, I should have. Okay, share screen. And there it is. And I'm sharing it. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? It's not my forte.
Yes.
But okay. So what I'm going to do now is go through a bunch of the resources that are going to be available to you as a result of participating in this seminar series. And you should feel free to pass all of this on to other folks in your schools or other colleagues or friends of yours. So the first thing I'm going to share, and it's going to look overwhelming. So don't worry about that, because you don't have to read everything. You read what you want to read. But this is the syllabus that that has been put together through the NEA, that is the macro version of a more tailored, low-key version of this course that we're going to be doing together. So you can see we've got benchmarks. If we go down here, right? Can you see? Let's see. Can you see where my
your cursor is? Yeah.
Cursor. Thank you, Karen. My cursor is. This is all the stuff about the history of community schools. So the article that I was just reading from is here, The History of Community Schools from the American Educator. But I want to also really recommend, for those of you who have a little bit more time, the one above it, the History of Community Schools by Dr. John Rogers from UCLA. It's a 75-page document, sort of like a doctoral thesis. But it really, took to the question that Lindsay was raising about, oh my God, they already figured this out, and then it fell apart. And then during Ocean Hills-Brownsville, a whole new vision, a whole new way of thinking about community schools came up. And so this is really in this document, and you could use it as your holiday reading. John Rogers takes you through really a much more in-depth history of community schools in the US. And then, this is just, but that's just one benchmark. And so this is just a list of all the readings and documents that are available to you just for a click. So I'm going to be sending this out to you all tomorrow. And you can go through it on your own. It just keeps going and going and going. It's the gift that never stopped giving. And if you don't have anything to do over the holidays, you can just go through the whole thing. Okay. Then the next thing that is available to you is that you can join an NEA Ed Communities group. And this document, which I'm going to share with you tomorrow as well, takes you through how to create a profile on the mynea360.org website. And so these are just the instructions, and I'm going to send this to you tomorrow. If you have any questions, just reach out to me and I'll try to help. I have to remind myself how to do it every time. And then if and when you succeed at creating one of these profiles, you're going to wind up, oops, oh, look, it died. I have to, okay, you're going to see me sign in. This is my other email that I only use for organizations so that I don't have to use my regular email. And you'd have to be really good to have seen my password there. So when you create a login, you'll wind up at a page, not right away, but you'll find your way here. You'll wind up at this page, which is Community Schools Cohort 2, which is who we are. Cohort 1 are the people who are still fighting to get community schools in their school districts, but because of the Blueprint for Maryland's, Blueprint for Education in Maryland, or anyway, the Kerwin legislation, because of that, we already have community schools. So we're not fighting for them, we're learning how to implement them. So you'll wind up in Community Schools Cohort 2. And then over here, where my cursor is, this is the syllabus that I just showed you. This is an assignment checklist if you want to do assignments, which you're not required to do. We're working on getting professional development credit for educators who are doing this course, but we're not there yet, and I'm not sure it's a hurdle that I can actually overcome. So so this is voluntary. And then if you click on this blended learning site, then it gets really exciting. Because you come to a whole other way of looking at this material. Is everybody being able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. 4 modules, let's see. Okay, so you'll see the same information as is in that syllabus, but my course is loading. Okay, but chopped up in a much more elegant way. So, you know, the documents that you can read appear here. You can click on them, you know, then, okay, so here's what is a community school, mapping. So it's a whole other way to go through the curriculum. So depends on what kind of a learner you are, you can do it either way. All right, let's see, I've been through that slide and that slide. Okay, so as I said, this is not mandated. You do what you want, get what you want from it. We're really trying to add value without creating a lot of cumbersomeness, because we know everybody is working about as hard as they can. So, you know, be in touch with me if you have questions. What's here? Oh, the first national Zoom that you guys can join is going to be on January 12th. We're going to be doing, I'll come back to that. So our next meetings, we're going to be doing the first Thursday of every month starting in January. So I don't know the dates, but I went through them, and it's the first Thursday of January, February, March, April, May. And I realized that we can actually do June, because the very beginning of June, we'll just have a party and talk about everything that we've learned and have done in our community schools up until that point. And so, so we'll have one more session before this, but I will send this to you guys tomorrow. But this is the calendar invite for the NEA Community Schools Cohort 2 January meeting. And it's really, some of us have been on those. I think, Oscar, have you gotten on one of those already?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so they're pretty amazing. I mean, they're you know, maybe 7 screens worth of people from all over the country, and you get to break out into breakout groups and have conversations with people who you otherwise wouldn't get a chance to meet. So it's pretty cool. And okay, and then so now we're only 15 minutes late. And let's go back to not sharing. I stop share. Okay. Oh, except that, oh, now I can't remember what I was going to do. Oops, I'm sorry. I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm going to ask you how learning about community school history builds on or changes your view of community schools, and anything else that you'd like to say. And you can just put that in the chat if you want, or you can raise your hand real quick and just a few words, because I know people want to get out of here. Anybody want to say something, or just put your thoughts in this in the chat? Maria Lucia. Okay, Hilda's going to translate.
Sí, sí. A mí se me hace muy importante también cuando hablaban referente a los padres, muchas veces también la cultura en donde venimos es muy diferente. Incluso hay padres que no fueron a la escuela, y al venir aquí tendría que trabajarse más con ello, porque yo veo la poca motivación en mi escuela de los padres de participar. A veces hay...
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so she's okay. She would like to explain that it will be important to have in consideration that a lot of parents come from another culture, from another country, and they feel that it's hard for them.
For those that don't know, Hilda is interpreting that to Evie in English.
Oh, no, to everybody.
No.
No?
Lucia?
It should be.
Le escucho.
Hilda
You'll
should
only be able to hear it if you're on the English for interpreting.
Right.
Otherwise, if it's off, you won't be able to hear it.
Right. If you want to hear what Hilda was saying, you need to go to the Globe and get on English.
Yeah, everybody, if they wanted to, yeah, they would have to mute themselves, the original audio.
Okay, go ahead, Hilda.
Sí. En pocas palabras, así que también, o sea, más que nada, cómo llegar a los padres, porque los hijos pueden estar motivados, los niños pueden estar motivados, pero muchas veces los papás no quieren participar.
In few words, how can you get to the parents? Because maybe even the students might be motivated, but not the parents.
Pero no están motivados los papás a participar.
The parents are not motivated. That would be
yo veo
few
esa
words.
deficiencia mucho de parte de nosotros, porque, bueno, yo tengo el interés de participar, pero también el miedo de participar.
Because I want to participate, but I'm also skeptical and I'm a little afraid.
No conocer mucho sobre su cultura, sobre lo
because
que
we don't know
ustedes,
your culture.
trabajan.
I don't know your culture.
Yo pienso que la gran mayoría de los papás también es el
So
miedo
I think
a
that the
involucrarse
majority of
porque
the parents
no
will
saben
feel that way.
cómo pueden participar más.
How can, they don't even know how can they
y-
participate.
Más que nada es eso. Así.
So that's really what I would like to say.
Okay. Hilda, what can you ask what school Maria Lucia is at?
Sí, en Harmony Hill.
Uh-huh.
Harmony Hill.
And
Harmon
that's
Hill,
in Montgomery County?
Sí. en
Okay,
Montgomery.
so Oscar,
Montgomery County.
will you follow up with Maria Lucia?
Mm,
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Oscar, tell her Oscar will follow up with her. That's his job. It's his job to help her be not afraid. Okay. All right. So I want to thank everyone for coming. I don't want to keep you any longer. Have wonderful holidays, everybody. And thank you so much. And see you in January, where we'll have a lot more people, because this is the second version, the second take of this. So we had about 50 people in November to go through the same piece that we just went through. So hopefully we'll have a big crowd. All right. Happy holidays. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.